Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and Najee Moye.
Well, how's it going? Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast. I'm Niko Tamurian alongside my partner in crime, Najee Moye. Najee, it's the offseason, but there's a lot, maybe even more to talk about here in the offseason with these Seahawks.
I almost feel like this is not, football season, great, and I wish we were still talking about the Seahawks in the playoffs as we kind of wanted them, thought they could. They were on the cusp. They were very close. But this is when the work for next year begins. I wish I could remember what what John Harbaugh said. We're going to attack this next season like with a ferocity not seen to man or something like that. I wish I had that. I think the Seahawks are attacking this next season. I say next season, off season, and also the next season. It's a whole nother season essentially.
We're in a new calendar year.
Yes, a whole new calendar year. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of things to fix, a lot of things to build upon, and I'm excited for the offseason.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of interesting things to talk about from the standpoint of one of the things I'm looking forward to the most is, and we've talked about it on the show before, I loved how quickly Mike McDonald identified problems and fixed them.
Right.
And fixed them well. If you look at the linebacker spot, specifically starting in November, Curtis Jones aboard, elevating Tyrese Knight, and it worked out. So what is he going to be able to do with a full offseason now?
Right.
Because remember, he didn't even go to the scouting combine last year. He was trying to build a staff in
Mike
February.
McDonald was really great at fixing problems almost immediately. I always think about, we were at one game and we saw a guy, Laviska Shenault, miss 2 kick returns. Ball just ran straight through. He wasn't on the team the next week.
Right. Mike
so,
doesn't screw around.
He does not mess around. I'm kind of afraid of Mike McDonald. I'm not going to lie. He's a big guy. But no, there's a lot of things to fix. But I think when you look at the offseason, the number one question is who will be quarterback?
Yeah.
In the future. Let's not just say next year. In the future for the Seahawks.
Because I think the Geno Smith question is a layered one.
There's a lot of layers. It could be who's the quarterback this year. Next year it could be different.
Right.
There's a lot of ways that the Seahawks can go. Lay it out for us, Niko.
I want to give you the facts on this.
Here's some numbers.
Let's look at. So why is this even a question? For those unfamiliar, if you're a Seahawks fan, you're quite familiar. But let's lay out the basics.
If you watch the game, do you know what we're talking about?
There's that too. There's the performance aspect, which I think is less of a thing. I think Geno, some of the issues caused, like, did he force some throws in the red zone? Yeah, you got to clean that up. Did he have no time to throw the ball? Correct.
Sure.
Okay, so there's that part of it.
Right.
But the basics, you're talking about, okay, so he's under contract for one more year. So he is under contract for the 2025 season. However, he wants an extension.
Right.
And so the question becomes, do you extend a quarterback who will turn 35 during the next season for the amount of money that quarterbacks go for these days, right? Are you committing to Geno Smith beyond 2025? There's some talk about this season, and the reason because of that is when the new league year starts in March, Geno will be paid $16 million as a roster bonus. That's a lot of money that you do not have to pay him. Now, it almost becomes a wash because he's got about $13 million in what they call dead cap because he's already been paid that in bonuses and whatnot. So there's that. But the question becomes, do you try to save that $16 million and move on this year, which I personally don't even think is on their heads right now, on their minds right now. But I think that that's what you talk about right now, that Geno, if you consider his salary for this year, for 2025, what he's on the books for, and you consider the roster bonus, it's close to $30 million that they would, in theory, it's not quite that simple, but save if he were not to be on the roster by March. Is that $30 million worth what he offers you in 2025? Is there an option out there that is better than what Geno brings you in 25 plus the $30 million in savings? And I think he's the guy in 25, but what's your take? Hearing those facts, for everybody watching this and listening to this, what's your take at home, Najee? What's your take hearing all that?
First of all, Geno Smith is the starting quarterback next year, probably.
I think he's got to be.
I do think you do pay him. I think he deserves it. That being said, he deserves it, but is he the answer going forward? That's why I say it's a layered question. Because as of right this second, we were talking right before we started this episode. I kind of wish they kept Drew Lock.
Sure.
And what is he doing in New York? Honestly, outside of one game, not really. Not really anything.
We had that big Eagles game for the Hawks last year.
Exactly. Yeah, but what's he doing in New York? Not really much of anything. And then you ask, let's talk about merits. Talk about eye tests. Geno Smith was a good quarterback for the Seahawks, exactly where the Seahawks are, exactly in the middle of the pack. He was in the top in the league as far as passing yards, top 5, I believe.
That was the thing. He was number 1 for a while with that terrible line that was injured and everything else.
But I think when you think about that, you think about also Ryan Grubb's offense was this pass heavy. 100%. Right. I mean, I remember seeing some of the box scores. You see Kenneth Walker running the ball 14 times a game.
Yeah. It's
not, Zach Charbonnet running the ball a little bit less than that. Definitely more at the end. And, we talk about the offensive line. Geno Smith was running for his life a lot of the time. I think you end up paying Geno Smith that big payday because you
believe in the extension.
Because you literally end up paying him that big extension because what are the other options?
Well, that's the thing, and the options are limited.
Do you trade Geno Smith?
Well, there's that.
Here's the thing, and I know you mentioned he's 35. Geno Smith's 35 is like maybe more like a 27 or 28 in the NFL because he was a backup for a backup for a long time. He didn't really play as long as some other 35-year-olds has. I think he's probably more in line as maybe Sam Darnold without all the success. Sure. He's got Sam Darnold obviously making to the playoffs and losing in the first round. But I just think about the picks.
That was the glaring thing.
I think about the interceptions.
He protected the ball a lot better in the first 2 years starting.
Right. I think, but in this offense, he was asked to do much more.
Sure.
With a lot less help on the offensive line,
and the offense will look different next year.
The offense will look different. Well, who's the guy?
And you got to move on in that regard too.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
this is also a big year for Geno Smith. In that this is, I would, if I'm the Seahawks, this is probably his last year in Seattle.
Okay.
Truthfully, only because.
Well,
Well.
Does he go out there without an extension? Probably. Right.
He has to. You play for it. You earn it.
And Mike McDonald had that quote. He's like, we love Geno. He's the guy we want to be our starter. That was a nice vote of confidence after some comments that were construed anyways being a little wishy-washy.
Right.
It's a big question because there's so many layers to it. Do you extend him? Do you let him ride 25, which the Seahawks are not known for doing?
Right.
They don't like to let that be a contract year. From the standpoint, what if Geno throws like 50 touchdowns and 4 picks?
Well, then you got to give him a big payday.
You got to really pay him.
But then you also, being the whole 35 thing is a double-edged sword because his 35 may look like 27 to a lot of players.
Sure.
But when you are like, oh, he threw 50 touchdowns and 4 picks, well, you're at 35.
Right.
In a 3-year deal, you're at 38, and you're a little bit younger than Aaron Rodgers was. Right. And we saw several years, and we saw how that turned out. Another layer to this is what are the options outside of Geno Smith?
They're limited. I mean, a guy like Darnold is a free agent. There's potential trade opportunities, but there's nothing that, like for me. One of those things we always tout on this show, how we're at the VMAC, we're at the facilities,
sure.
We hear things, we see things, and I can tell you, and I've said this many times in this show, that leading up to the draft in 23, they loved Anthony Richardson. Now, granted, Pete's gone, but the front office staff loved him. Now, he may be in a little bit of
he's a worse thrower than Geno Smith.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that even if Geno is your guy in 25, especially if you don't extend him beyond that season, the succession plan has to be in place.
Yeah.
You're picking 18th. You are way too far out to get any of the top guys this year. Barring some kind of trade, which was, I think the Hawks learned their lesson on trading draft capital in the Jamal Adams deal.
Yeah.
So I think that that's not an option. You either look to the free agent route. The Sam Howell window is limited, but I don't think it was. I think it was telling in what we did see, and I think that just a lot of the free agent options out there that aren't even remotely close to a Geno Smith as far as familiarity with your program. Darnold's out there and he had a great year this year. Does he replicate that success here? I don't know.
Well, first of all,
some people are talking about, the Vikings had a great year with Darnold. Does that make J.J. McCarthy available? I mean, but again, I don't know if he's necessarily an upgrade because he's unproven.
I think it does.
Okay.
I think if Minnesota moved on from Darnold to be a mistake, I mean, you see what different situations can do for certain quarterbacks, also known as not being a New York Jets, can do for certain quarterbacks.
So they should trade for Zach Wilson?
I think, well, first of all, I think Minnesota should extend Sam Darnold. He's your quarterback. He's still young. He got you there. That being said, Kirk Cousins got the Vikings to the same place last year, and they lost to the Giants. But then there's the J.J. McCarthy question.
Right.
And I know he's being kind of shopped around. I know he's been hurt. And we really don't, a lot of people, even last year before the draft, didn't really know what you're going to get from the Michigan quarterback because you're a Michigan quarterback. It's like you're not really the onus of the team. It's not really like you're going to Alabama. And I saw J.J. McCarthy on the sidelines a couple of weeks ago, and he looked very skinny, and he didn't seem like a quarterback to me.
I was surprised he was picked as high as he was.
I was too.
Like that Michigan team, it's a national championship team, but they did it in a lot of different ways.
It's
wasn't like McCarthy led them to victory.
It's not like Michael Penix leading the Huskies.
Without question.
Yeah, exactly. It was very apples and oranges, but we saw who won that game, though. That's the problem.
Did. Well, hey.
Now, free agents, Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
I don't dislike Zach Wilson. I think if you see...
You got your list there. Let me hear some of the other guys.
Okay, Zach Wilson.
I know you compiled this, yeah.
Trey Lance.
Another one of those guys that could be good, but we, never really...
I do think, though, that
he had a little bit of a window.
One of these guys needs to be picked up for cheap because of my second pronged attack, but I'll get to that in a second. Jacoby Brissett, a proven backup. Great backup. Taylor Heineke, Marcus Mariota, Jarrett Stidham, please. Drew Lock could return.
We love Drew.
Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, who I think is interesting.
That's of all the names you've read, based on what we've seen, especially from Geno the last 3 years, like Fields is the only one that kind of makes me tilt my head a little bit, like, oh, maybe part of a succession plan.
I say this as a Giants fan. If the Giants don't look at Justin Fields at least a little bit, we're having issues. Anyway, Jameis Winston, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mac Jones, Carson Wentz, and Joe Flacco. Now, I think one of these guys needs to get a very quick deal from Seattle. Now, because Sam Howell is not the option. In my head, there's one quarterback in Seattle, and that's Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
now,
yeah.
100%.
I mean, and Geno's so durable, right?
And he's durable.
I mean, something like I forget the exact number, but it was well over 95% of the snaps that he took this year. We only saw him miss action late in the Green Bay game, and then he comes back for the next week.
I think the second prong to this attack, this thought is that. You're not going to get the Cam Wards. You're not going to get the Shedeur Sanders. You're not going to leverage the whole draft for these guys. But Jaden Milroe is interesting.
You can get a second or third round guy, perhaps.
Jackson Dart is interesting, too.
He's a guy that
He's a guy.
Right, so that could be your succession plan.
That could be the succession plan. Geno Smith plays this year, maybe, and you sign one of these guys, maybe Marcus Mariota.
And I've been a big proponent of, for any rookie quarterback, that they should get a year. I mean, every guy is different, but a lot of these guys need a year to play backup.
No, I completely agree.
And I think that's part of the issue with Geno not doing well with the Jets back when, with Sam Darnold not doing well with the Jets. I'm sure there's a non-Jets guy. Well, I mean, look at how much better Bryce Young was at the end of his second season.
It takes time.
You know what I'm saying?
It takes time.
Everybody's different.
But that being said,
get it every now and again. You get a Stroud or a Daniels that are
or
great
even
right away.
like I hate to say it, like Bo Nix.
Yeah, who turned out to be pretty darn
looking
good.
Great,
and he got better as the year went on.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I think for reasons like that is where you maybe want to look at a guy like Jaden Milroe. If Drew Aller was coming out from Penn State, was coming out this year, he's not. I would say this would be a good consideration for him because he can probably be a third round talent, I think.
Right.
And the Hawks can get him pretty easily, and that could be maybe a work in progress. Geno Smith is a great teacher.
Yeah. Oh, he's a consummate pro.
Pro.
Even if, let's say, they drafted, throw a name that you mentioned, Jackson Dart out there.
Yeah.
Like, Geno would show him the ropes. I'm not worried about that. And it comes down to me, the money question. Are you going to invest that $30 million in Geno this year, and then that be it? Are you going to... And if you do the extension, how long do you do it? Like, last one was 3 years. Would Geno be okay with a 1 to 2 year extension?
I just can't see them cutting Geno Smith right now because
I don't think they do that.
Or cutting him or trading him because what is the other option? Sam Howell, and then you almost definitely have to look for the draft, and you almost definitely have to look for free agency. But the hard thing is though, when you look at the number of picks he threw this year, you can't deny that. You can't deny all the stats he took.
It was trouble. Yeah.
I don't know if the Seahawks had a better quarterback, if they would be in the playoffs right now because of the offensive line and maybe because of the unique way the offense was going.
Yeah.
Like let's just throw names out there as far as other quarterbacks in the NFC West. If Matt Stafford is the Seahawks quarterback, are they winning any more games than they won with Geno Smith?
I think it's marginal.
It's marginal, right?
Yeah.
But same thing for Brock Purdy. Well, no, probably not.
Right.
I just. It's tough. Interceptions are such a glaring thing. Some of the games we saw, Niko, the Seahawks weren't even in from the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
They're talking about the Packers game, talking about the Bills game. And if you want to go from medium of the pack being decent, 10 wins is good.
Right.
They didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because they just laid complete eggs in some games,
And when it's a 1-game difference, it's you look at those and like, oh yeah, that was it.
It's not something you can put on the quarterback specifically, and you have to look at this team. And I think if Geno Smith gets traded or doesn't get this big extension, I think he can only look at the offensive coordinator, Brian Grubb, or the offensive line as the reason why.
And I think that's the low end probability, like we talked about.
I
don't
think
he
so,
gets.
too.
I don't.
Yeah.
I think the Seahawks winning 10 games, knowing that there was a patchwork offensive line and things of that sort. I think that they're content to ride with Geno in 25.
I think so.
But again, it begs the question of succession. And
there needs to be assurances, I think.
Right. There has to be. You're either extending Geno or you're not, and you better make a move this year to get who you think is an heir apparent, whether it's a Justin Fields, whether it's in the draft, whether it's a trade for an Anthony Richardson or a J.J. McCarthy, something like that. If you extend Geno, which the longer that extension goes, the more concerned I would be. Right. Not because of durability, not because of age, but just because it's like
you're tying yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And let's be real, like 10 wins was great, but it was the best since 2020, meaning that you've been very middle of the road for a while now.
Right.
4 straight seasons.
You have to start thinking.
And granted, one of those was Russ, like 21, but still, yeah.
Your good is good, but it needs to be better.
Yeah, and so if you're looking at the Seahawks and you're looking at it, if you're looking not just at the quarterback spot, but you're looking at the larger picture, I see a defense that has the potential to be lights out. And we saw it in the second half.
Yeah.
And Mike McDonald gets a couple more pieces in there. I mean, I don't even know where you need to upgrade. I mean, there's some really maybe depth at corner, but that's about it.
Depth at corner.
But I love the linebackers. Maybe sign another linebacker, but I love the edge rushers. I love that deep D line, which is huge.
Right.
Your starting corners, Reek Woolen and Spoon and Julian Love in the safety spot. I mean, those guys are here to stay.
Right.
And that's cool, and that's great to see. So you have the potential to have a dominant defense. You have to look at the factor of how do we strike now. I keep thinking this in my head, and I'm going to get some flack for this, but I don't care. Because this has popped in my head about 3 times while you and I have been talking.
Mm-hmm.
It almost reminds me a little bit of the Mariners. From the standpoint of...
Okay.
Let me explain this.
No, I see it.
So, like the Mariners, they approach to try and upgrade their roster, and it's different. The NFL is a salary cap, so everybody can only spend the same amount. Whereas the Mariners not spending can kind of hold them into the upgrades we've seen.
I can feel all the Mariners fans rolling their eyes right now. Go ahead.
But I guess the point I'm trying to make is you have this window, both sides. You have a dominant Seahawks defense. You have a dominant Mariners defense by way of their elite pitching staff. And when you look at these larger pictures, you got to strike now.
Yeah.
You have to make the move to strike now. And that's the comparison I'm making. Is that, and for the Mariners, it's like, okay, you got to go out and get a bat. But for the Seahawks, is Geno the guy to get you to the open window into the big game? Is he the guy? Can Geno Smith bring you to a Super Bowl?
It's troubling to think about because there's so many other variables in that. When you consider the offensive line, I would say when you look at comparatively the other options and talking about the free agent class, there's risks with Zach Wilson. There's risk with Trey Lance. Jacoby Brissett serviceable.
None of those guys are upgrades from Geno.
No, exactly. Close. No, but how do you go from good to great? You just do better, You do better on the offensive line, and maybe consistency is what you could need. But this is also 4 years of mediocrity. Suddenly going to be consistency.
You know
what?
I want the first, the second, and the third round picks to all be offensive line.
Is that possible? Is that?
They won't do it.
Is that feasible?
They won't do it. But yeah. I mean, in theory, if the prospects fall the right spot,
and
you know
what? I would love it. And let's help Geno out some more. If we talk about the offensive line,
then you can get Mike his linebacker in the 4th round, his third linebacker, or whatever.
See, I mean, I think Geno needs another weapon on the offense. Now, the offense is great.
And there's the Lockett question, which is another show.
There's a Lockett question, which is it's a really hard question to have.
Yeah, and that to me, Lockett, And he made a great point of saying, like, he was doing what it was asked of him. That's why his stats suffered.
Right.
But he was, obviously he was WR3 at the end of the thing.
Sure.
And so can Jake Bobo do that? Can somebody else bring? Probably. But they don't bring the leadership and the intangibles, the ability to draw pass interference, to make clutch plays that we've seen so many in the last 10 years. And so that's another question for Geno, right? Because Tyler is something of a security.
And by the same thought, there also has to be a DK Metcalf question also. I've heard a lot from Seahawks fans that are just kind of like, okay, well, JSN is JSN. He's obviously wide receiver 1. DK Metcalf was maybe supposed to be that.
Right.
And could still be that. Little parentheses, I'd love to see DK Metcalf play tight end. Can you
That'd be
imagine
something,
that?
yeah.
Yeah, he's big enough, certainly. Maybe people expected more, maybe better stats from DK, as opposed to.
To me, I think that's the attention he gets.
It's the attention.
And that's why JSN had such a great year.
Well,
in part. Anyway.
Imagine if there was Tyler Lockett's number 3, but he's a 3 that could be a 4 next year,
Right. There's the money question.
And there's the money question too. So it's like I'm thinking maybe you can maybe sneak a pretty quick receiver in the draft to really help, or even a tight end to really just bolster whoever is playing quarterback next year.
Yeah. So the question is clearly layered, like we talked about. There's a money factor.
Right.
There's a who's better in 25 or 26 or even 27.
So what should they do, Niko?
It's a tough question. I think unequivocally we agree Geno has to be your quarterback in 2025.
Because there's no other option.
There's not a better option, barring some trade that we're not seeing.
Right.
Barring some big trade where you are likely having to give up draft capital to get what would be a unanimous upgrade to Geno, which is honestly, given the options, highly unlikely.
And a name just popped into my head, and they would never trade him because it's in division and it makes no sense to. Kyler Murray.
Right? Wouldn't that be something? That's not going to happen.
That would never happen. But honestly, if we're talking about,
just trying to get a rise out of the Cardinals?
Well, no. I'm a big fan of the Cardinals fans. I honestly think that he would be an upgrade from Geno Smith, but there's no way that can happen.
No, that's not. No. So
because of where the Cardinals are right now, they need to build around.
So you have these layers about the weapons around him or the protection in front of him, the money factor. And again, it boils down to, like you said, what am I doing? We agree he's got to be the quarterback in 25. There's just not a better option, barring some, pie in the sky idea like you mentioned with Kyler, which would be great. But I don't know. I don't even. He's more talented. Maybe he's more dual. But but then the question becomes, what do you do after? And to me, that's the big question. Do you do the extension, and if so, how long? I would be like, if they announce a 1-year extension through 26, I'm happy with that. I'm okay with that because you get 2 full seasons to figure out what's next. If they say 2, I'm 50-50. If they say 3, I'm by 27.
2 full seasons, and then there's like 2 more seasons of being 9-8 and 10-7. It's like, is that good enough? I mean, and we'll see how the Rams have done this year. Like I said, we're speaking about specifically. This is a very tough division. The Niners will be better next year. Yeah. The Cardinals are coming, and the Rams are already there.
Right. So this is we talk about windows. You got to make something happen.
Yeah. So I'm more confident in the Seahawks making something happen than the Mariners. Talking about the analogy you made earlier.
Geno, we agree. Geno's the quarterback in 25.
Yes.
Is Geno the quarterback in 26?
Probably not.
You don't think so? You think they let it ride on a 1 year and let it just play out?
I don't think he's the quarterback in 20. I mean, because I can see another 10-7 missing playoff season happening. That being said, where are they going to get this talented quarterback that's going to save the franchise?
Yeah.
Well, Zach Wilson. If
it was me personally, my decision, I'd give Geno a 1-year extension.
Okay.
Give him something.
And then you draft someone.
And you either draft or you figure out that succession plan that isn't Sam Howell right now.
Okay, so
and I think Sam's a cool guy. I don't think he's the answer necessarily.
I really think they need to take a risk on one of these free agents because we saw how different situations can help
Justin
or hurt.
Fields could be your own Geno Smith.
I mean, we saw Justin Fields actually playing pretty decent in Pittsburgh before he got benched for Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
it's true. And then also Sam Darnold, Minnesota. That's why I think they'll give him more money because you saw he's a lot younger than Geno is, and he's been through a lot less trauma than Geno Smith has. And I think this is a situation where Sam Darnold can thrive. I think he's out of the list. I think he's going to be in Minnesota for the rest of his career. Honestly, I just don't.
So you're not buying the extension. You're like 25, 1 year. See what happens. That's it.
The interceptions.
Yeah. Well, and then that was a little bit jarring to see this year for sure. I would say if it was me, like I said,
the sacks,
I would do a 1-year extension.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about a 2-year extension, which means he's your starter in 25, 26, 27.
The rest of the team has to get
the
rest of the team has to get significantly better.
And it's not because it's not right. Like that's our answer.
Right.
What do you think the Seahawks will do? I know they value the quarterback. Obviously, well, who doesn't? I know they value Geno. They like what he brings to the program. We also know Mike Macdonald doesn't screw around, so there's that factor of it.
We talk about fixing mistakes.
I feel like Macdonald's comments. One thing we've noticed about Mike is that he's just such a straight shooter, which is wonderful. That he can't even mask when he's not happy with somebody.
Right. I think.
And the last comments he made about Geno that were very much a vote of confidence felt like something's going to get done.
I think a lot of the answers that what the Seahawks will do lie with who the next OC is.
Yeah.
Honestly, because if they okay, we can retool this offense where Geno doesn't have to throw so much. He can maybe run a little bit more because he's very fast. And then fix the offensive line, and then we'll see what we got. We got 2 talented running backs that'll both be 100% next year, and I do not know why the Seahawks didn't lean more on Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
And force Geno Smith to but that may be an offensive line thing as well. Right. So
it's not an easy answer.
It's not an easy answer as far as what I think the Seahawks will do. It's probably what I don't know.
I think they'll end up giving him 2 years extension.
You think so?
And with the idea that they can easily get themselves out of 27.
So that means Geno Smith is for sure their guy.
Right. I think they. But again, I'll give you the caveat. I think they work some stuff in that contract that 2027. Even if they give him a 3-year, which I think we both think is too long, but even if they did, I think they work the back end to where it's easier to get out of. In other words, the money's more front loaded.
Right.
In other words, he gets a lot of money in 26. Less than 27, and if that's the end of it, great. Or even less than 28.
I think even if you do that, you still draft somebody.
Without question. You figure out the succession plan.
Yeah.
I mean, you do the Packers mold. Remember, John Schneider came from Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers sat for a while.
Yeah. Jordan Love sat for a while too.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you do something like that. Whether it's just 1 more year, whether it's 2 or even 3 seasons of Geno. Here's what if it's me.
How do you think Seahawks fans will react to 3 seasons of Geno?
I think there'd be a little bit of concern. Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? Even 2 seasons of Geno, there's
I'm a fan of Geno. I think he does a really nice job. I think he's a good leader. I think other than the uncharacteristic based on the 2 year prior, the red zone picks, I thought he had a really good year. But that's a big other than, right?
My question is 3 more years, 2 more years of Geno. 2 more years of missing the playoffs, ideally. Right. Not ideally, but let's just say, can McDonald, Schneider survive that?
Well, I think McDonald got a fresh slate and started with 10 wins. If you don't make that next step, it becomes more of a John question.
Right.
Because he's the one who's been there forever.
Sure.
I think if it comes down to that, I think it becomes more of a John question than a Mike. But yeah, this is what makes this offseason so interesting.
Right.
Because you can't have another year where you miss the playoffs.
No.
Not for this team. I mean, the 2 year gap was already the longest.
And this was supposed to be a very winnable year in that division.
Yeah.
And
the schedule next year's tough. Vikings come here. You go to play the Commanders. You go to play the Steelers.
Yeah.
And then outside of the conference games and some other ones like the Bucks will be here. So it's going to be an interesting one. But I think that to summarize for our viewers, Geno Smith, the guy in 25, I'd be shocked if he wasn't.
Yeah.
I give him a 1 year extension if it's me. Najee says no. I personally think the Seahawks give him 2 years. I think they sign him through 26
I think
and 27.
that'd be a dramatic mistake.
I think that's what they do, though. And I think that they make 27 easy to get out of. Remember all those years ago, Donovan McNabb got a contract with at the time, the Redskins, now the Commanders.
Right.
And it was like a big money deal, but it was incredibly easy to get out of.
Right.
Which is what they did. And so I think it's a similar, I'm not apples to oranges on years and money and all that, but I think that's what they do is they lock Geno through 27, but the idea that 27 can be a year where they move on if they're stuck in mediocrity or if Geno takes a step back, that sort of thing. That's my verdict on what they'll do. What I would do is 1 year and what you would do. We're all on different wavelengths.
We're all on different wavelengths here.
But we hope let us know in the comments what you think. We certainly appreciate you being with us all season. It was a blast bringing you the game breakdowns. But now we talk about these big questions. We have some fun episodes coming up, including my one-on-one conversation with Ernest Jones, the Tyler Lockett question, And, of course, by the time we get through those episodes, we'll be talking with some Seahawks legends at the Seattle Sports Commission Sports Night of the Year Awards, which is amazing.
Yep.
You're going to want to check that out in February. We'll have some content from that. And then we're getting into mock drafts, combine, and all that stuff. So Seahawks,
my favorite.
Seahawks football, there is no offseason.
There's no
question
off-season.
about it.
No.
And Najee and I love bringing you. So, for Najee, I'm Niko. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.